Welcome to Tripodcast, episode 267. It's Monday, December 17th, and Dick Ollek wants to talk about sales. In this first of a multi-part series, Dick's going to share several tips, strategies, and techniques for improving your sales. Let's listen in.
In this Tripodcast, I want to provide what I consider to be some helpful hints in your sales presentation. You know, we try to keep these Tripodcasts at a reasonable length, so I'm not going to give you a complete training class here, but I'm going to try to give you some helpful hints. Well, first of all, key point number one is you're preparing proposals for your prospect, not bids. We bid commodities, and I hope you're aware that the service you provide is not a commodity. This, by the way, is an entire workshop on its own that I do. The difference between a bid and a proposal, and the difference that your company will, and how your company will be viewed by your prospects and customers, depending on whether you choose to provide bids or whether you choose to provide proposals. Number two, be on time. Now that seems pretty simple, doesn't it? But I can recall working with a gentleman a couple of years ago, actually, where this was a consulting project I was doing. He asked me to come down and work up a proposal with him on two twin 100,000 square foot buildings. They sat side by side, two 10-story buildings, 100,000 square foot each. This would be his largest project, and he was considered to be the most favored nation, I guess you would say, to get this business. Well, I produced the proposal for him, got the pricing, and he was happy with it. And I caught a plane back to my office, and I called him then the next day, and I said, "How'd it go?" And he said, "Well, he wouldn't let me present." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, I was half hour late for my proposal, for the appointment." "Why?" "Well, I got busy doing something else." "How could you be busy doing something else when you got the biggest proposal of your life?" Well, anyway, he said the guy was pretty angry. And I said, "Well, can you make it there on time if I can get you back in?" Because I had met this guy and this buyer, and frankly, I hit it off pretty well with him. So I called the buyer back and I said, I know that it wasn't right and he messed up, but give him another shot. Because I know he can do the work for you. He's a good guy. He just, okay, Dick, all right. It didn't go quite that easily and quite that fast, but that's what happened. So, of course, I called the next day, or the day after the next appointment. Guess what? The guy was 15 minutes late the second time. So I didn't bother. I didn't bother to call the customer or the prospect, because the prospect didn't let him come the second time either. So there was a guy that lost 200,000 square feet. Now, he didn't have it, so he couldn't lose it, but he was considered to be the favorite by the prospect to get the business. Incidentally, the gentleman's no longer in business. So number three, remember to set the time for the proposal presentation at the time you do the walkthrough. This is very important. If you're doing the walkthrough now, before you leave, say to the prospect, "When would be a good time? Could I deliver the proposal the day after tomorrow, or 1 week from today, or tomorrow, or whatever the two of you can agree on?" It does two things. It keeps you in the mind of the prospect, and secondly, it forces you to go home and do the proposal while the numbers are all still fresh and everything is still fresh in your mind. Number four, if possible, in a one-on-one presentation, sit next to the prospect so you can control the turning of the pages as you make the presentation. Don't ever get frustrated when you're sitting across the table and you're trying to read upside down, and of course they're paging through the proposal. Of course, one of the ways I've learned to do that, or I did learn to do that, was I would not include the pricing information in the proposal. I kept that in my folder. So, because many of the buyers decide many times they just want to go right to the price page, price section. So I would keep it in my folder. If I knew that he was a buyer of price, mostly, I would keep it in my folder. And so when he got there, oops, hey, section 7's empty. Yeah, section 7 is. We got 6 more to go through, and then I'll give you section 7. And it worked many times. Okay. Number 5. Never speak ill of a competitor. That should speak for itself. Number 6. Choose your words carefully as you present. A small mistake can result in a big lost sale. For instance, if your wife or your girlfriend likes to hear a phrase like, "When I look at you, my dear, the hands of time stand still." Doesn't that sound good? Honey, when I look at you, the hands of time stand still. Beautiful words. But try saying, "Honey, you have the face that would stop a clock." You're probably going to get slapped. You said basically the same thing. Or, look how one day on a calendar can make a difference. If you say to your spouse, "Looking at you, darling, is like the first day of spring." Or if you say, "Looking at you, darling, is like the last day of a long, hard winter." Now, you're only talking one day apart, but you made a big difference. So be careful. See how, you get the point. Just be careful in choosing your words. Like if you've had a little struggle with turnover in the neighborhood, don't say, "Well, our people we're having a heck of a time finding help here." Rather say something like, we continue at all times to be in the recruiting of quality people at all levels of our company. And that sounds better than, "Man, we're having a heck of a time finding people." Number 7, dress appropriately for the event. Learn in advance what the dress code is, and then be prepared to dress like that. Number 8, ask for the order. As a matter of fact, you should be attempting to close a sale throughout the entire process. Even when you're doing the walkthrough, you should be trying to close the deal. But anyway, always ask for the order. And I have a whole dissertation in another section where I talk about a salesman that I had who was the greatest guy you'd ever want to know, but he always forgot one thing, and that was he never asked when we could start cleaning the building. So here are some questions, by the way, that when you're asking for the order, some objections that might come up that I thought I might just throw in there. First, I don't like being invoiced at the first of the month. Our company had a policy. We invoiced at the first of the month for the service for the month we were in. My answer was always, "When would you like to be invoiced? If we invoice on the day you want, will you award us the contract? We can start as early as and then give them a date." I never argued with a customer over that. If they said, "Look, I don't want to be invoiced on the first day of the month. I want it to be the 30th or the 25th or whatever," that's fine. Do you usually start on a weekend? We can start when you want. How about on the, how much room do you need for your supplies and equipment? And my answer was always, "Well, why don't we walk to the closet and let's double check the room you have, and then I can give you a better idea." What that did is by walking to the closet, we again saw the bad condition, maybe the sloppy condition that he or she had seen when we did the walkthrough, that maybe it hadn't improved. And so it just again put them in a position to want to throw the other guy out, so to speak. Would you be keeping the current employees? Well, are there employees you would like for us to keep? We'll guarantee each one of them an interview. And you'll notice I said we'll guarantee them an interview, not guarantee them a job. You're too high. Now this one comes into play if you've not really reviewed the specifications without the pricing and got them to agree to the specifications. And then my answer usually was, "Can you give me an idea of the dollar amount that's in your budget? With that number, we can together discuss the specifications and arrive at some frequency adjustments that can meet the budget you're planning." And there are some other things involved in that, but in essence of time, Another one was, I want to think it over, and that will be the subject of a future podcast when they say, I want to think it over. I will talk about that in a future podcast. So, let me ask you. Take advantage of some helpful hints and close that sale. Thank you.
You've been listening to a Tripodcast, short video and audio presentation about important topics in our industry. If you're a current subscriber to the Tripodcast, thank you. We appreciate it. If you're not yet a subscriber, please check it out. It's free and it's easy. Come to www.tripodcast.com, enter your email address on the right-hand column, and click subscribe. We'll send you out a new Tripodcast every Monday morning.